movie nerds, and welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we are going to talk about the movie Women Talking. This film dropped at the end of December, I believe, of last year, but it just came out on video streaming, so I sat down and gave it a watch. This was one when the trailer came out. I knew I wanted to see it. I just didn't know kind of where I wanted to see it. I assumed that this was going to be a bit like The Whale, like along those lines, and I didn't really feel like I wanted to cry in a theater for an hour and a half. So I waited for this one to hit streaming before giving it a good amount of my time. So Women Talking is about a group of Mennonite women who are being attacked and kind of molested by the men and sort of older boys of the colony where they live. And after a particular attack on a very young child, the movie starts with them kind of coming together in this barn and deciding that something needs to happen, like something needs to be done. The attackers were kind of captured, I think, by some of the younger girls. They were sent to town and arrested, and basically the Mennonite men all took money into town in order to bail these attackers out and told the women, you know, by the time we get back, you better have forgiveness in your hearts, and that is that. So basically the entire premise of this film is all of the women of this colony coming together and deciding, do we run, do we stay and fight for ourselves, or do we just give up and give forgiveness and do nothing? Now, the premise of this, I think, is an incredible one. The story itself is one that I think is important and a good topic of discussion, but a good topic of discussion makes a good TED Talk. It doesn't necessarily make a good film. And I think that that is kind of where Women Talking kind of comes up a little bit short. The film itself is incredibly flat. It is incredibly dry. There isn't much, if anything, really going on in the film. It is exactly what the title says. The entire film is women sitting in a barn talking. Now, even though the conversation is important, I don't think that audiences necessarily want to sit for an hour and 40 minutes listening to women make pro and con lists about options that they have. It's not compelling, which is unfortunate because I think the topic, again, is a compelling one. I think that maybe the translation from the book to film just needed to have been done a little bit differently to be more visually appealing, I guess. And I'm not saying that visually the movie isn't good. I mean, they have an incredible cast of actresses in this that I think are absolutely amazing. I have nothing to say about their performances. I have nothing to say, bad about the cinematography or the way that the film actually looked. I think both of those in this instance are incredible. What falls short for me is just that it's not a very interesting film to watch, even though the topic itself is an interesting one, if that makes sense. So though I don't believe that, abuse or molestation or anything of that nature needs to be in a film in order to represent things like this, I do think that there are just actions and things that need to happen in a film. That's the whole point, right? Otherwise, why not just read the book? It kind of doesn't make sense to me that this was adapted into a film in the way that it was adapted into a film. I think if they had showed one or two instances, not even of some of the harder stuff, but for instance, there is a wife and her daughter who have to go home at one point while they're having these sort of secret discussions. And one of the men happens to have come back and he is there. And because he's been drinking, he enacts some violence upon these girls. But you don't see any of that. You see the aftermath of it, which kind of propels the story along, but you don't actually see the violence, if you get me. So if I would say whether or not I would recommend this film would be entirely on the type of films that you like to watch. If you are okay with a slow burn film that is not going to have, much, if anything at all, going on about it, but you're okay with kind of the topic itself or the underlying message being an important one, then I think that this film is going to be for you. But if you're looking for something that is a little bit more interesting as an actual film, I don't know that this one will be a win. I mean, I don't know. I think it kind of depends. This one has to be one of the movies that I'm more disappointed in just because every single actress in here was absolutely incredible. And I can't say anything bad about it, but there just was no meat to it. It's a bit like having two pieces of bread and calling it a sandwich. That is really kind of what this film is to me. It's you have two pieces of bread that are really great pieces of bread, but it doesn't make a full thing. So it is disappointing because I think that the underlying message, the actual story being told here are great. The people that are telling it are great. But there are just so many times where you are kind of left as the audience having more questions about what's going on. There are a number of different characters in this one, August being one of them, Scarface Jans being another, where it kind of gives you these glimpses into a deeper, more well-rounded movie, but it never goes there. It never touches more on either of those people. It never gives you more. It kind of just gives you a little bit of a nugget. You know that these women are going through something incredibly powerful and incredibly painful, and that just isn't witnessed visually on the screen. So this one is just, it's not quite a win for me, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it is something that I disliked. So this one is kind of an oddball film. For me, it's not a black and white yes or no, watch this or don't watch this. It's definitely an interesting kind of gray ground there. So those are my thoughts on Women Talking. I would love to know yours if you've seen this film. Subscribe if you want to join the Movie Nerd family. You can find me on Instagram at Cinematic Sarcastic Podcast, and I hope to see you in the next episode.